Greetings everyone, hello and welcome to this beginner's guide. Now Frostpunk 2 is upon us and it is an extremely complicated and difficult game. So in this video I would like to start up a city with you and just introduce you to the basic mechanics, what you need to watch out for, what traps you should avoid and how you set up your city for the mid-game. Before we start, you can purchase Frostpunk 2 with my affiliate link on GamesPlan to get a special discount on that. I would also very much appreciate your like and subscribe and also a Patreon support if it's up to you. And the first thing that we're doing is, if we're not playing on survivor mode, is of course pausing the game immediately and just having a quick look around. This is the core of the city. This is kind of like the city how it ended in Frostpunk 1, we can imagine, and from here on we're expanding it now. We do have a bunch of parameters up here that we need to check out real quick. The first one is my total population, that is consisting of 8,000. That's the starter population that we have. We have out of that 4,800 people that are ready to work, right? The rest is children and weak and old ones, and these 4,800 we can use for our districts. Out of these, no one is disabled right now. That is the sickness rate that we're having as well. We got 450 heat stamps, 1,500 prefabs and 1 steam core. The heat stamps we're getting out of our population. It's kind of like the taxes, right, that my population is paying for me and that we can use. The prefabs is going to be needed for every building that we build in this game, and it's one of the rarest resources available here. The steam cores, once again, is even rarer than this. It is, however, only used for advanced buildings, and you can find them on the world map. Next up we have our central resources, probably the most important aspect of this game, and that's heat. This is what the game is all about. We have coal, oil and steam for this to use. You're starting with coal only. The other two you need to research first if you want to use them in your generator. There is also the heat indicator. That just means right now that we have a heat surplus. That means every structure, every building that we have, every person in the settlement is fully heated, right? So this is how it should be all the time. We can also see that we are consuming coal right now, and my stockpiling is going to be out in 30 weeks. Every resource has a stockpiling, by the way, here, right? So it's always also important to juggle around with the stockpile. It is totally okay to be negative on something as long as you have a massive stockpile of it that still work for it. One of the things that is actually having a massive stockpile in the beginning is food, for example. Here it's negative 120, so you might think, okay, I should immediately build a food district, but nope, you have 50,000 food in stock, and this is going to last you for quite some time, so you don't need to worry about food in the beginning, really. Also, 80 homeless people, 80 people without shelter. This is very important to actually get rid of quickly. Also, we have material demand and we have goods demand over there. Those two are also very important. Materials is basically going to be needed for every food and every fuel production, and the goods is needed for my communities. Without goods, there is going to be an increased crime rate and also a tension rise. So goods demand is kind of like the luxuries that you need to put in, but you always need to have them available, otherwise your communities will collapse rather quickly. Last but not least, up here we have the guards and the Frostland teams. That's the scouts, and the guards basically they secure the peace in your city, and it's important here to understand that in the beginning you don't need to worry about them, right? They're a mid-game to end-game activity then later on. Having now looked at all of these up here, we can also see that there is 5 big symbols. These are your indicators of the situation in your city right now. So we have the cold situation, for example, that is growing right now. So you can also see that this here is, you know, like it's burning. And if it's burning, it's actually growing, and it's a demand or it's a problem that is increasing right now. And that is the cold. And that is because, yeah, we have 80 homeless. This is important. Now, the other one is squalor. Squalor is the pollution that you have in the industry. We don't have industry yet. We have crime. This goes up if we don't have goods demand fulfilled. The more crime we have, the more riots will appear, the more unproductive buildings we'll get. On the other hand, over here we have diseases. This is directly attributed also to pollution and also to cold, to heat. Right, so in this case here you want to keep this low, and there's various mechanics you can do this. And then of course there's also hunger, so as long as we have food, there's no hunger brewing. Now this is basically everything that we have up here. One more thing is very important, that's the temperature forecast that we have. Right now it's negative 20 degrees, that means it's perfect, right? 20 degrees, that's the warmest you will be able to see this, right? We can also see that in about 60 days it's going to get colder, right? By then we do need to have a better heating in place. The colder it gets, the higher my heat demand will be, and the more coal and fuel production in general consumption I will have. So this is very important to take into effect here. If you feel secure on your coal production, for example, but there's a temperature drop in, you should re-evaluate if you have everything set up for this. This is the upper area. The lower area consists of your progresses. This is actually very abstract, but it's super important. You have 3 ways of your settlement development. That's progress, that's the merit, and that's the tradition, right? So every law that you're going to get in this game is advancing in one of these areas here, and every one of these areas is affecting your factions, right? So we have 3 factions up and running right now. More are coming during the progress of the game, but forages right now is a standard one, so they're neutral. You have also the laborers, and you have the machinists, right? And all 3 of them have different strengths. So for example, the foragers right now have a size of 41, so that's my biggest faction at the moment. And they're also a relatively mild faction, so it's easy to make them happy, right? They're not radicals or anything like that. And if you go into the foragers, you can then also see adaptation is key. So that means they want to go for progress, adaptation, fighting against the cold, right? That's the main progress that we have. On the other hand, on the other end of the spectrum, we have the machinists. Therefore, progress, technological progress that is, that we would have, for example, in the tradition reason tree as well, right? So it's always important to have a compromise to make everybody happy, basically. This is what you need to look out for. If you get too high on one of these areas here, then probably one of your factions will not like this anymore so much. All right, but we'll see how this goes on as we progress. And last but not least, we have the lower right area of this game, and this is basically your districts, your buildings, your hubs, and your frost break area. This is actually something that we need to tackle in the beginning right away. Okay, finally the dry section is over. Finally we know how the interface basically works, how all of these parameters work. And next up we're looking now at my map, immediate surrounding. So we cannot see that much, right? But if we press the Alt key, there you go, we actually get an overlay of all the resources we have on this map. And it's looking okay for this one. This is random every time you start the game, right? This is getting distributed randomly over the map. Sometimes you have more materials, sometimes you have more food. It really depends on that. What is fixed though is the scout locations, so the waypoints. There's 2 of them. We're going to need them if we want to start with the scouting. We have the food over here. There's a bit of food. One of them is infinite, potentially. That means we need to research something down the road to make this one infinite. Until then, well, we have 84k of food available here, right? As it's shown on the overlay here, the shallow fertile soil. On the other hand, over here, we got forests. Forests provide us with materials. In this case here, one of them is also infinite. If we research a certain technology, we can go for the deep frozen forest. That gives me then materials, well, until I stop the game, basically. On the other hand, we have something very rare that is not so often the case on every map, the prefabs, abandoned ruins here. So this is the one that we need for every construction we do. And then we have over here as well. So don't confuse the prefabs with the materials. The materials is basically an input that we need for districts like coal, fuel production and food production, right? And the prefabs is actually the one thing, the construction material that you need for building. And last but not least, we have an oil deposit here. This is nice. Usually there's oil or geothermal plants that you can do. So either you go for steam or you go for oil on a map. On this map here, we go for oil, for example. So we would need to adjust for this one. Oil is then also basically infinite if you go down the route of oil extraction. One more thing is important, and that is that you cannot build everywhere immediately. We can see the white outlines here. This is a buildable area. This is where I can build immediately. And then we got these netted, this gritted area that we have there, right? And this is unbuildable area. So we would need to frost break our way to these areas first if we want to build there. Now, after having learned everything about the map, it's time to really start building something. And for that, we need to frost break, right? We need to frost break to the coal deposit, very important. So I'm actually going ahead. We're going to press X for the frost break, and with that I can now start with it. And we should make sure, because frost breaking actually is expensive, it costs workforce and heat stamps, so we need to keep this one as a minimum, right? You don't want to waste too many resources for frost breaking early on. And for that I can see, okay, we start here at the edge of my buildable space, and we want to move over there to the coal, and kind of like on this way move over there to the waypoint system. So I'm going to first of all take the materials in here, because we're going to need to exploit them really soon, and then I'm actually going to move over there, right, towards the coal. And we can only get 8 tiles at once in a frost break, right? Once I have the 8 tiles, I can accept, and this is starting to frost break now. I'm doing the same thing on the other side, because you can actually frost break as many times as you want simultaneously, as many times as you have the resources for it. Food is the other important thing, and also moving towards this waypoint station there is important. So let's just check it out. This is actually a really funny, food structure, but it's okay. So we can actually do it like this, right? Take as many food in and accept. So we are also now starting to frost break. One more thing is important before we unpause the game, and that is also starting the first district. So we open the building menu with B, and here we have now the housing district that I would like to start with, right? And this is actually also very important, and that is the heat when you build something. So we can see there's the generator district, and the blue overlay basically shows you the heat. And you don't want to build districts isolated somewhere, because you're not getting any heat out of that. You want to combine heat, right? To save it, to save fuel essentially. So the first housing districts we're going to have immediately next to the generator. That would be probably somewhere here. And if I do it 3 times out of the 6 tiles that a housing district requires, I get the full heat bonus, right? So if I build 3 here, we get the full heat bonus. Did you see that? So the layer is now full, and I get 20 heat out of this. This saves me a lot of fuel, because it means the housing district is no longer consuming 40 heat, but only 20. The other 3 tiles I can actually put into the white area here, right, to expand the district. This is basically also expanding my heat zone, by the way, so future districts should be adjacent to this. Let's accept. And this starts the construction of a housing district. I usually go with 2 housing districts right away, because that immediately solves a lot of my shelter problems. So the second district I would probably like to have on the other side somewhere, because there is going to be the frozen forest over there, and it's important to combine districts to save this heat, right? So I want to probably go with an industrial zone then as well over here. But let's start with the housing still. So let's have the housing over there now too. Second housing, once again 3 tiles, maximum heat, and then I can have the other ones over there in the back of it. Perfect. We're going to explore the other districts very soon. Let's unpause the game and just have a look at these things are being constructed now. While that is the case, one more special building we can now do, right? So I said we have the districts with the B. We also have the buildings with an N key. And the buildings are special buildings. You want to get them done. The one is that we have right now is the Research Institute for the housing. And then we have the council hall for the central district. Central district, the one with the generator. And there's the council hall. We need to build this right away, because this unlocks the law process, and we need laws. So let's actually put it in there right away. It does cost me some materials once again. Okay, so just to recap again, right? Frost breaking, building the first housing districts, and building our law council in the center. The game is unpaused right now, so we are consuming resources. The food surplus is going to last us for 58 weeks at this point, so that's okay. We can last with that quite some time. And after a while, the first frost breaking is done. So I'm going to press X again, because we want to immediately continue with the frost breaking. We're now over here, and I would like to go now for this whole area. Taking all the coal in, and move further then towards my waypoint over here. We can do the same thing on the other side, where the frost breaking is also over. It's not mandatory. One waypoint station is fine, so here we're not doing any frost breaking anymore. After a while, we have unlocked now the first buildings as well, the council gather for the first time. This is important. I'm going to pause the game again, and we're going to open up the law for the first time. Now, the council hall is divided now into all the factions that we have in the city right now. These are the actual factions that are sitting here, right? You have the laborers, you have the foragers, and the machinists here in my case. Those three that we started with. And we can start now with the first laws, right? So for laws, we have 4 trees. The rule you can actually completely ignore for now. The rule is something that you have once you're really stable. You can go and start with these here. They're very hard to manage, very hard to assign actually, and you need to have a very well, happy population at first glance. So survival, city, and society these, and all of them start with 2 laws in the beginning, right? This one here has 4, the city, and the society has also once again 2. So survival, city, and society. And all of them have different bonuses, and all of them are only favored by one of your factions though, right? While making other factions perhaps even unhappy. The first law that I would like to go with usually is the basic necessities. In this case here, we have the paid essentials down here, right? The production efficiency is slightly increased for all of my buildings. That is massive. And the heat stamp income, so that's my money basically, is also increased with this. 2 things that we increase with that. However, what we can see is there's only 16 in favor and 18 against that, and even 66 are hesitant. It's very hard to get this law through in the beginning. So we're going to propose it nonetheless, right? As we propose it, it's now up for debate. And this is going to take now a bit of time. We can also speed it up. So in 10 weeks, that would be the voting now. We can negotiate now, right? And we can see now all the factions that we have. And we can see that the foragers and the machinists would be open to negotiate. And they have a lot of delegates, right? So 40 delegates would be a win if we can do this right. Alright, so let's negotiate with the foragers here. In this case here, okay, vote for it please. And these are the terms they have. Either I'm going to give them the law of foraged additives then. This is though tricky, right? Because others might oppose the law. So in order to get this law, I would need to do some more promises again. We can also do the community action, fund them. So we basically give them money as a compensation. Or we also grant them an agenda. This is tricky because they decide the next law. Super bad actually in my opinion. So I'm actually going with the law of foraged additives because I know providing some food, that's actually something that everybody will like. It's an easy law that we have, and as I can see, we have now 47 in favor. Let's accept this one. And with that, 47 in favor, only 16 against. This means it's a certain win. You don't need to work on that anymore, right? The blue bar is in the center, a bit beyond that. That's fine, because just a few people that are hesitant will need to accept this one. Let's vote. And as we can see, out of the 51 required, 66 voted for that. The law has been passed. And with that, we're getting now the first law in. This is boosting my output a bit for my extraction zones. Very good. However, we need to pass the forged additives in the next legislator. Since I'm a very impatient person, we can also speed up time with 1, 2, or 3 on your keyboard, up to 2 times the speed and up to 3 times the speed. And with that, we have also finished the first districts, right? The housing, 2 times over there, and the frost breaking is also done. I'm going to pause the game again because the next steps will need to be taken now. One is very important and a bit confusing perhaps. Each one of these districts here can be expanded, right? And if you expand them, you will unlock a building slot. Now don't forget, for the buildings, we still want to start with the researching, the research institute. That is a building, and this one requires to be built in a housing district. So we need to expand one housing district to unlock as a building slot. So let's go ahead and unlock this. It will cost me some heat stamps again and also some prefabs, but we still have 1060 available. Let's expand. With the expansion, once again, it's important to use spots where you might want to expand in the future, right? So I could take these 2 in, right? Because I know I'm going to have another district then here. Let's accept this one and expand the district. While this is happening, we can continue now finally in this area because there's a lot that we need to do now. We need to start up a material production, and we actually need to start this before the coal production because the coal production requires materials, otherwise it does not function. So let's start with that. This is the next district now, extraction. The extraction district gives me basically anything on the map that is not food, right? So it's the materials here, for example. It's also the coal. It's also the oil. So anything that we take out of the earth, right? It's also the prefabs, by the way, the ruins. So extraction zone it is. It requires 600 workforce, heat stamps, and prefabs again, right? And we want to take in as many of these tiles here as possible. It's 6 tiles that we need, by the way, minimum again for every district. In this case here, let's just see. Perfect. All of the material districts here, the tiles can be in this district. So I can build this 6 out of 6. The next in line is extraction once again, the coal that we have over there. So let's also have all of these tiles here in one extraction zone, all the 6 of them. The shape doesn't really matter. You can have all different kind of shapes for these districts. And the third zone that I would like to start with now is the logistics. For this, I still need to unlock the old way station. Let's Frostpunk again, keyword X, and get this one done. Alright, so some constructions are on the way again. The expansion is on its way. We still have the food as well, but I'm not doing the food just yet. We have a huge food stockpile, right? And I want to save some resources. By now, we're also getting a bit low on heat stamps, especially for my researching them. So one thing I like to do early on, where we have a good reputation with all of my factions, I could go into the machinists, for example, and actually get a favor from them raising the funds. I do get 186 heat stamps, but we significantly worsen our relationship with them. Right? We can also do the same thing with the forages. In this case, I would like to go with the forages actually, because we have the promise for the forages, right? If I fulfill the promise, we actually boost our reputation with them again. So yeah, I can make it up to them really soon. Let's get the money. That's 200 heat stamps in addition. That's super nice as a funding. What happens though with that now as well is my trust level. Down here we have it, the overall trust. We've lost a bit of that. If the trust reaches 0, basically your community collapses into chaos. There's protests, there is going to be no more work to be done at your city. No one wants to work anymore. You will have no chance at enacting laws and stuff like that. And it's pretty much over at this point, right? You get an ultimatum then, but that's it. So you always want to keep your trust up. You get the trust by fulfilling the demands of your citizens, that is heat, and that is also the goods. And you're also getting the trust up there by making those factions happy with the law giving, for example, but also, for example, with an action like fund their projects. So I could use money again if I have a surplus and fund projects for them, improving their relationship. In this case, also very important, there is in the middle here the tension mirror. This is also an indication of how people are actually doing right now in your town. The higher this gets, the higher the tension, and the more tension you have, the more likely it is that one of those factions is going to protest. If they protest, they're going to completely lock down one of your districts, and the district will not work anymore for as long as the protest goes. The only way to break these protests then is to actually give them a promise or an agenda even, so that makes them stronger. In this case, try to keep the tension low. Once again, write laws, fulfilling the demands, and also all the heat. Very good. A bit later we have finished the expansion of the housing district, and we've also finished now our first extraction districts. That is the material, right? And that is my coal extraction that we have. With that, we're still not quite there on the coal side. So one thing I can do right away in order to fix this, I could expand the coal district right away. What is probably going on though is that we will not have enough space here. So I'm going to, Frostbreak my way again. And of course, we want to combine a few things. I can actually combine the coal district with the logistics district over there for heat. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to expand this area here. So both of these districts can expand in that area and, combine each other. You always want to have districts together. This makes them strong. In this case, let's wait it out again real quick for the coal. In the meantime, the material district is now working. It has a building slot right from the beginning. And also we can see here now it has a demand of 20 heat, of 50 materials. So the material district has a demand of materials itself, and it's producing 165 materials baseline, right? Also we get a bit of a boost here from the paid essential law that we had. Very good. With that, we actually have a surplus of materials now. That is good, but we already have a pretty big stockpile of materials. So we could actually lower now the efficiency bar here. This basically turns it off, right? 0%. 100% is full speed. And we can also lower it, for example, to only 80% or even only 60%. With that, we still have a surplus. The advantage of that is if we only work at 60%, we lower the workforce demand, we lower the heat demand, and we lower the input demand for materials. So let's actually keep it a bit lower there to maximize its efficiency. Also, the housing district was expanded. So let's go into the building menu again with N and have the Research Institute built finally. These are really the most important steps, right? The council hall and then expanding a housing district to build the research immediately. It should really happen as soon as possible. And there you go, Research Institute has been constructed in this district here. There it is. Now, with that, we open up the idea tree. It's called the tech tree. You can also do it with the key R. There you go. And the tech is just as complicated as the law process, really. So we have those trees up here. The heating, the resources, Frostlands, city, society, and hubs. All of them advance different techs, right? The resource is all about your resources output and efficiency. The Frostlands is all about the exploration. The city is all about the working conditions of your people. The society is all about additional service buildings like watchtowers that increase security or hospitals that reduce diseases. And the hubs is all about boosting districts in their vicinity. They're going to be the last ones that we're going to research. The first one that I usually like to research is right away in the heating, the coal mines, if we have the coal mines available. Let's click on the coal mines, and now we actually get a choice once again. We now need to decide which type of coal mine we want to build, and this counts for any kind of advancement. There's always different alternatives that are supported by the different factions in your city, and each one of them is a bit different. So for example, my foragers here would like to have the dust coal mine. My machinists would like to have the blasting coal mine. Both of them have different advantages and disadvantages. The machinists way, for example, actually requires less workforce, has a higher coal output, but also 3 times as much material demand, right? The forager, once again, requires more workforce, has a lower output, but only requires 20 materials. It, however, also increases diseases, whereas the machinists only increase the squalor, so that's the pollution, more or less. Since, well, coal mines are very far away from the city, this would actually be possible. However, 60 material demand is something you need to have a lot of material for that. I usually like to go for the dust coal mine early on. Let's research that idea. While we research that, let's also have a look at the other tags that you should be going first. So the coal mine is super important. The other ones would be then in the resource tree, and that's the hothouse, sawmill, and factory. These 3 are very important because there is one very important thing about Frostpunk 2 and your districts. It's always better to go tall instead of wide. That means before you build another housing district, before you build another extraction district, it's always better to just improve the district that you already have with specialty buildings. And that's what these tags are for, right? The sawmill improves your extraction material district. The hothouses improves your extraction food district. And the factories is improving your industry district, and with that your goods output that we're going to look at soon as well. Always go for upgrades first before you build another district, because that's always way more expensive, especially in the maintenance area. Now, let's continue with the first logistics zone. The frost breaking over here is finished, so we can now build the next district. B, it is once again for the districts, and here we have now the logistics district. Once again, workforce is required with that, heat stamps, prefabs. There is a total demand, a constant demand for heating and materials once more with this one. So let's go ahead and start building us this district here. And we can see we are getting a bit into the heating area here of the coal district, right? And this is definitely something that we should use as well. I'm not going to get all of the bonuses in just yet because there's still this area available, but we're going to expand the coal district now there anyway, and then both of them are going to boost each other. So just like with the housing district, we can also go in now and expand the coal district. There you go. And once again, the 3 I can take, and with that we have the full bonus now for the logistics district, both of them, by the way, right? So 20 heating for both of them in addition. Super nice, right? So they're working together here, saving me fuel, essentially. In the meantime, the law cooldown is off again, so we can propose a new law. We have the promise here, forged additives. Key C brings us back into the law again. And here we have the survival tree once more, the food additive. The game actually shows you where we have a promise to fulfill, right? That's pretty helpful, I think. And in here we have now the forged additives. This is something the forgers want, and this is supported by them. They're the largest faction in my game right now in my city. That means also there's the biggest support for this. And this actually looks like a very good, deal already. Very safe, actually. We could negotiate further with the machinists once again, or with the laborers, right? To make this really secure. On a higher difficulty, it gets really hard to pass laws, so you always need to compromise here. And we can actually do two things here. Yep, I can get them in, secure the law for sure. And I can also have a look what we should do here. And the law heat pipe watch is actually something they want. That is a law that is super helpful. Heat demand has been increased with that, decreased. So this is something I'm going anyway. So I can promise them, make them happy with that, and get the law done as well. This is why the compromise is actually really helpful instead of a lot of additional, hassle, because you can actually make other factions happy too with that. And we want to do this. Very good. This looks very supportive now. Let's vote. And with this decisive win, we have the forged additives that is bolstering my food production a bit. Also, we have the demand met, relation with them improves, the trust overall rises in my game. Right, so we are back already on the full reputation with them again, even though we got the money from them. So that was an easy win for us here. We can do the same thing, by the way, with the laborers now. We have the promise with them. So before we fulfill the promise, I could also demand some money from them. But since they're the smallest faction, they only would give me 100 heat stamps. Better than nothing, I'd say. So let's actually get that. In the meantime, something happens in the game itself. As we can see, there is something going on here that we should click on. Cutthroat economy, paid essentials. One of my factions actually wants to reduce that bonus again. Right? We can also say, no, right now I don't want that. There is no penalty for this because usually it's shown beyond that or below that. So in this case, I'm actually going to keep it. This will happen quite often, that some of the other factions demand you to do something that will hurt one of the factions that profits from this. Right, so that will be one of the centerpieces of the game, especially mid-game onwards. Onwards to the next district. So we have now finished, very important, 2 housing districts, 1 extraction for material in my material forest, and 1 extraction zone for the coal. Right, we've also frostbreaking our way to the extraction zone over there, where there's also now a logistics zone building up for the scouting. We have 2 more districts that we have yet to build. One of them is the food district. We're still going to wait on that since we have a lot of time with the food stockpile right now. So I'm actually going to go into the industrial district, and this is something that's going to be very important for us because the industrial district processes prefabs for us. It also produces goods for us. And I would like to get this started ASAP. Now for the industrial district, I usually like to have this a bit closer to my extraction zones and my city. So we can kind of like have it in here and combine the industrial zone together with my housing districts, right? So we can kind of like combine all of this here together. And what you can see right away is it's boosting then not only the industry zone because it's connected to 2 zones. We are also boosting those 2 zones here with the industry zone, right? The heating. So we save a lot more heat down the road. Let's just see. There it is. We have perfect bonuses for both of the districts now, plus 20 heat. There is, however, one thing, and that is the industry zone produces squalor, right? So it produces pollution. The housing district here will not like it too much, but it's really a minor problem that we can also easily fix down the road. So I take 1 step of squalor in here easily. Let's do this. One thing you should never do, and that is building your food district close to your industry zone, because you will pollute your food and that makes people sick. Never do this. A little bit later, the industry zone has been finished, and with this we're producing now either prefabs or goods. You can only do it either way, right? So right now, goods is not that important to me yet, as half the demand has been met already by the baseline concept of production that we have. So I would like to produce a few prefabs so we can continue producing buildings, right? But only to a certain moment. Here, there is a very important tech that I would like to show you as well. I was actually talking about the sawmill, the hothouse, and the factories in the resource tab. So we start the first research with the coal mines, right? Because that boosts my coal output. Next up, we're going for the sawmill, the hothouses, and factories. And here it's up to you what you go first. Usually I like to go with the sawmill first to boost my material output. Next, you go for the factories immediately. This is super, super powerful because with the factory, you have the ability to produce prefabs and goods at the same time. So it's not either or anymore, but you produce both of them at the same time. I love this. So usually I like to go for the salvaging factory right away as my second tag. After all this, the next in line that we have finished now is our logistics district up here. The logistics district is finally unlocking us scouts. So for the baseline here, this one here is producing 15 Frostland teams now. I would like to expand this right away with another one, another expansion that we can do, because this way allows me then to get another 5 out. And then we have 20 Frostland teams. You want to do this ASAP, because with that cheap upgrade right away, let's just wait for it to finish, you get 2 scouts that you can have, because 10 Frostland teams usually is 1 scout team for exploration. Now with the key V, we can actually move outside of the city. You can also scroll outside and inside the moment you want. It's all in real time. Fantastic, isn't it? Now we scroll all the way outside into the Frostlands that we have. And we have 4 options, 5 options available right now. It depends on the map. And in this case here, we can click on that and look it up. There's the plains with a threat level of safe. There is also a threat level of dangerous, and there is then also of deadly somewhere. There it is, right? You don't go there in the beginning. You also don't go to the dangerous zone because many of the scouts will be injured and unavailable to work for you. So we want to go for safe only. There's one here with safe. There's a possible finding for cores in this one here. And on the other hand, we have a safe one that has a possible finding of food, coal, and materials. It should be clear that this is my go-to here right now because food, coal, or materials, either one of these would be perfect. Let's launch the expedition. 10 teams it requires. However, we have another teams available, right? Thanks to the expansion of the district, we can actually also go ahead and have this one here right away. Launch the expedition. With that, we're using all the Frostland teams now to have 2 explorations going in both directions. This will take some time. So in this case, let's wait it out. They're arriving, and now it takes even more time to explore it. As the exploration will take quite some time, we actually can do some other things in the meantime. Some people froze to death, that's because we don't have enough housing yet. So here I could go in and build me another housing district now. Let's build the 3rd one. Once again with the heat demand fulfilled for the generator. There you go. And we can also go ahead and build us our dust coal mine now that we've just researched. The basic building, right? This is giving me a 150 output for the coal again. This is a lot because the extraction zone gives me 160 already. So this is almost twice as much for only 20 more materials. So you can see how going tall is so much better than going wide because you get so much more out of it. In this case, twice as much coal. We're going to need this as there is already the first temperature drop coming in soon. So let's go ahead and do this and build this one here. Since we have expanded the district, right, we can actually have a building slot. And with this, build it. It's also up to you now at this point where to go with the researching. In this case here, we have the sawmills and the factory. I usually like to go with the sawmills next. And you have 2 options here, the mechanized one or the untreated one. And in my case here, I like also once again the untreated one because it reduces my heat. It has reduced heat consumption. Also very important, we can go with the next law. In this case here, I usually like to go with the goods and the mass-produced goods, so the good production efficiency is increased. This will help us out then greatly for the production of goods, basically, and for my factory. Finally, my scouts have finished their scouting, so we now have a couple of points of interest, right? So let's click on this to unveil it. Here we can see there is a food deposit available that would give me 70 food. Now my total food demand right now is 100, so it would almost be enough for my whole colony, right? That's pretty powerful, this one here. However, 30,000 food is not that much. We have also here a note. This one just unlocks us something new for another source of food. Let's just see where it is. Alright, we cannot see it yet. And this one here is a huge stockpile, a warehouse for materials and coal. 50,000 that is. It would require 5 Frostland teams for a very short time. So we can keep this one up and running I'm actually going to keep this one now and I can come back later once we are in an emergency, because you get this in very quickly here. So keep those stockpiles on the map for now. On the other side of the map, we have 2 more points, cores, 3 cores, that's good. I'm going to keep them here once again. And we're also having here more cores. All right, that's that. I'm going to keep them on the map as well, again, because what we want to do is we want to continue with more exploration. As you scouted this area, you unlock now the surrounding areas, right? This one here, deadly. This one here, deadly. This seems like a dead end to me. This one here, deadly, right? So there's no way here anymore. So we can have a look at this one. There's another safe one with food and materials. There's another valley here with oil and materials. And there is another one dangerous here. There's oil. Oil is better than coal. If you find oil on the map, you should probably go for it at this point. So I'm actually going for the oil as my next exploration. But don't forget, we have 2 teams available. So I would also like to go for the second expedition that we can do to unlock us both of these. And out they come. The cool thing is, this is actually real time. So I can actually also look into these areas here, because this is all one map, right? Which is really cool. So at some point you will just be able to scroll through your whole map. Back in the city, do you see my coal surplus? That is just beautiful. That's a lot of additional heat that we have with that. In this case, we're going to need it because there is the first temperature drop coming in now. Now, what we've also done in the meantime is we've connected the extraction district here, expanded it, right, to make up for the building that we're going to have now. And also we finished the next research, the sawmills. So I would like to go for the factories now right away. And this one here, the salvaging, I like more because it has a lower heat demand. Now let's look at the sawmill. My output of the extraction district is 125 per day. With the sawmill, we're getting 170 materials in addition for only 20 more heat and 400 workforce. Since we have 1200 workforce available, this once again is a clear winner. Let's build this one right away. Another thing I would like to do as well is I would like to finally build my last district, the food one. As we can see, the stockpiling is going down, 19 weeks left. We have stockpile on the map, right? So food. So the food district will not solve my food problem. Output is 50. So either we build the hothouse or we use the stockpile on the map. It's up to you really at this point where to go from here. Let's actually build it then here just along this. Definitely take in the infinite mine here as well, right? And then that one. We can, yeah, expand then to the others as well down the road. And by now, the city is growing nicely. It's now more and more individual choices that you need to make, like for example with the food problem that we have at hand. Alright, let's wait for this to finish. There is my material. We have finished the building. There's so much material coming out of this now that I can actually further lower the efficiency here and still have a surplus of materials. Well, basically having almost no heat demand here anymore. This extraction district requires no heating, right? Because it is just profiting from its surrounding area. This is what you absolutely should aim for when you build the districts. We have built the food district. In this case, there is one more mechanic that is really important to look at here, and that's the emergency shift. The emergency shift gives you an additional food production with a permanent trust reduction. Since we have a lot of trust right now, we could activate this one here and almost solve my food problems with that now. We can keep this active as long as possible. As long as this is running, we just have this penalty here that is now calculated in, right? We can always deactivate it as well. The other emergency measure that we have then here is for my housing district, the rush researchers. This is super powerful. Once again, it reduces your trust, but it significantly speeds up research time. And for the generator, we have a very important tech as well. That's the overdrive. If you activate this, you significantly reduce the consumption of any kind of fuel in your city, right? While this is running. It is, however, going up to 100%. If it is at 100%, the generator explodes and you lose the game. So you definitely need to deactivate it before it reaches 100%. And by now we have the first temperature drop, colder season. Kicks in now. We can see that my heat demand is increasing, and with that also we have not that much surplus anymore, but 174. I can see that there's another temperature drop coming in, but it's still a bit off, right? So we do fine. We have a huge stockpile though. So at this point, you probably should also work on hubs. Let's have a look at that. Construct a hub. Key H it is, and here you have now your stockpiles that you can go with. The most important one early on is the fuel stockpile. Super important to build this one. Where do we build it? Because it requires workforce. You build it right next to an extraction zone, because this actually gives you the workforce reduction bonus that you definitely want to take with you. It only requires one tile, and we can build it. And this essentially doubles my fuel stock. This is the first hub you should always build, because with that you can stockpile more fuel, and you need that for your first whiteout. It is now time to build my salvaging factory. This is my favorite building that we have. That's in the industry zone that we can add now. And this will solve a lot of your problems early on, because you see there is two options you can get for the prefabs. Either you go with the researching for the salvaging factory, or we could have also, if we could press the Alt key again, used an extraction zone on the prefabs. This is a trap. This is a huge trap. Never build the extraction zones for the prefabs. It's really not necessary. It costs you a lot of resources that you don't really need to spend on this, because once the factory is finished, there it is, we can now produce prefabs and goods at the same time. We can still set a focus. Do we want to focus more on the good production, or do we want to focus more on the prefab production? In my opinion, it's better to go with the goods production. You have a nice surplus of that, you stockpile some goods, and we still produce 11 prefabs per week, which is fine because we're not going to build that much anymore. So at this point, the early game, the earliest game pretty much is over, right? We are kind of like secure. We have a, well, secure stockpile here, right? So we are having a slight negative impact here for the stockpiling. This is now where, yeah, certain choices kick in that are always different in every game. So it's a bit more individualized here now. And it really depends on what kind of stuff you find on the map, what kind of resources you have. And it's all about the preparation now for the first whiteout. It's not on the horizon yet, but it will be at some point. This is one of the mid-game things then, the whiteouts, right? Preparing for the first one is the most important one, and also starting settlements, because this is also something we need to find on the map. We have finished now two more areas here. One of them is an oil deposit, very good. The other one is a material deposit. One of them is a food deposit, and one of them is once again a material deposit. This, by the way, is a checkpoint. It's super rare. Don't count on finding so many material deposits close by. But it gives us options, right? It gives us options of what we could neglect right now. Right now, I don't want to have that emergency shift running for the food all the time, nor do I want to invest the resources into a hothouse just yet, right? So I do have a bit of a food negativity here. So I can use one of my Frostland teams now to get the food in. And with that, the common herd, we can harvest that. This will cost me 5 Frostland teams for the duration of this deposit. 29,000 food is going to run out actually really soon, but for now it's going to help us. And as we can see, immediately we have a positive food surplus. The other thing was the materials. I could still do this. We are using, though, the material expanded district here not at maximum capacity. I could still ramp it up here. So all is good in this front. With that, we have a positive surplus of everything that's important: the fuel, the food, the materials, and the goods, right? So my people should be relatively happy. There's only 2 homeless. That is absolutely fine. It's not enough to warrant another housing district, and we cannot expand anymore as well. So, oh, actually, my bad. We can actually expand this one here once more. So let's do this and get us another expansion here. And with that, we actually have housing for everyone. So at this point, we've pretty much set up the city for everything that's to come. The early game is over with that. We have a positive surplus here of all our important construction materials and goods. We have a positive fuel intake that we can stockpile now. We have a good tax income and a prefab production. So this is how you can set up a city in Frostpunk 2 with the laws and the researches. And in this game here, we would now prepare for the first whiteouts to come then at some point. The whiteouts basically will wipe out your production for the time being and triple to quadruple your fuel consumption for the time being too. So you need to stockpile fuel, at least 100,000 up to 250,000 before the first whiteout. Another very important thing to work from now on in the mid-game then is the settlements. Once you can find one of them on the maps, you can build a settlement on the map that provides your city then with interesting resources that you will also need. If you enjoy this, we might also make a guide about the mid-game, but I really want to tone it down right here. Oh, this is the beginner's guide, setting up the city. It's now set up, it's prepared for the days to come. It's up to you now to make the decisions you need to do. I hope you enjoyed this one. If you enjoy my Frostpunk in general, I'm also having a let's play about this. Don't forget you also get a discount, a special discount, if you purchase the game on Games Planet with my affiliated link. And I would also be very happy about your Patreon support, your like and subscribes of course as well. Have fun surviving the Frostlands.